My parents forged my signature and thought I'd never find out. So, I guess this is the part where I finally tell someone what really went down at the Lane family winter dinner. And trust me, I'm still trying to wrap my head around how fast things went from, let's have a nice family meal, to, Harper, you're basically the family's full-time safety net now. If you think I'm exaggerating, just wait. Because what happened that night wasn't some sudden explosion. It was years of pressure settling in the worst, most predictable way. And for the first time in my life, I didn't just take it. I didn't smile through it. I didn't swallow it like I always do. I snapped, but quietly, calmly, the way a steel beam gives after holding too much weight for too long. My name's Harper Lane, 30 years old, grew up in a tiny railroad town in Montana where everyone knows everyone, and unfortunately for me, everyone feels entitled to everyone else's business. I work at a repair shop for freight locomotives, which means I come home smelling like metal dust and diesel more often than not. It's a hard job, but at least it tells the truth. When a bolt fails, it fails. When a part cracks, it cracks. There's no pretending, no guilt-tripping, no you owe us, the way my family has always done. Honestly, that shop has been more of a home to me than the house I grew up in. Anyway, every December my mom insists on hosting a big winter dinner, not because our family is close, but because she likes to pretend we are. She sets the table with mismatched plates she swears are heirlooms, even though I'm pretty sure she got half of them from yard sales. She dims the lights a little too much, lights candles that make the whole house smell like vanilla and pine, and tells everyone to act like we're the picture-perfect American family. But the truth is, we're more like a snow globe someone keeps shaking for fun. Last winter's dinner was the worst of them all. I walked in wearing my thick work jacket because my truck heater only works when it feels like it. Snow was melting off my boots, and before I even had time to wipe my feet, Mom looked at me like I'd dragged a pile of mud straight across her soul. "Really, Harper? You couldn't at least clean yourself up before coming?" she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. And I swear I saw my dad glance at my jacket, then at his beer, then right back at the game playing silently behind him on the TV. Not a word in my defense, not that I expected one. My brother Mason was quiet that night. Well, quieter than usual. He sat near the end of the table with that hollow post-divorce look, like someone unplugged all the lights inside him. His 2 kids were beside him, one drawing on a paper towel, the other eating crackers like they were currency. I felt bad for him, I really did. Divorce is rough. But I didn't realize just how much worse the night was about to get for me. Dinner started like usual. Awkward small talk, clinking glasses, Mom passing dishes like she was hosting a cooking show no one asked for. But then the air shifted. I can't explain it exactly, but it was like the room got heavier, thicker. Mom cleared her throat. That sound she uses when she's about to deliver something she knows will get her way because she's already convinced herself it's the only logical solution. "Since Mason's divorce is finalized," she said matter-of-factly, slicing through the quiet like a blade, "Harper will be helping raise the kids, financially and, well, in every other way she can. We need stability right now, and she's the one who can provide it." I froze, fork halfway to my mouth, and for a moment I genuinely thought I misheard her. But then Dad chimed in, eyes still glued to the TV, as if what he was saying was as normal as commenting on the weather. "If you've got a problem with that, the door's right over there." And just like that, it became clear. They weren't asking. They weren't suggesting. They weren't even acknowledging that I'm a whole adult with my own life, my own rent, my own exhaustion. In their minds, I was already assigned the role. Harper, the dependable one. Harper, the financial backup. Harper, the built-in support system. No consent needed. My cheeks burned, not from shame, but from something sharper. Something that had been sitting in my chest for years, waiting for the right spark. I looked at Mason, my sweet broken brother, waiting for him to say something, anything. But he kept staring at his plate. Maybe he was embarrassed. Maybe he agreed. I still don't know. I remember thinking, so this is it. This is the moment they finally say it out loud. Because deep down, I always knew they saw me this way. The strong one. the useful one, the one who never complains. But hearing it spoken like a rule, I swear it felt like someone tightened a belt around my lungs. Mom kept going, as if my silence was approval. It's simple, Harper. You're the one who has your life together. You have a steady job, you're single, you have the space, it just makes sense. Single. That part stung more than it should have. As if being unmarried meant my time was automatically theirs to claim. As if being alone meant I didn't deserve boundaries. I finally breathed out and said as calmly as I could, Mom, are you seriously telling me, right here at dinner, that I'm responsible for raising Mason's kids? She gave me that smile, the tight, patronizing one that always made me feel 12 again. Don't make this difficult, Harper. Family helps family. But what she really meant was, you help us, because we expect you to. And the wild thing is, they had no idea. No idea what I'd been planning. No idea how much I'd already endured. No idea that the version of me they thought they owned wasn't sitting at that table anymore. They had no idea that winter dinner would become the last time I let them speak to me like that. I wish I could tell you that winter dinner was the first time my family tried to rope me into being their personal safety net, but honestly, that night was just the first time they said it out loud. The truth is, I've been holding this family together since I was 22, quietly, invisibly, the way everyone expects from the responsible child. You know the role, the one who's too tired to argue, too broke to escape, and too loyal for her own damn good. Or at least, that's who I used to be. And when I think back on it now, it's wild how easily I let them convince me that exhaustion was love and sacrifice was gratitude. After that dinner, I drove home with the heater squealing again, my breath fogging the windshield like the truck was sighing for me. I sat there in the parking lot of my apartment complex, staring at the steering wheel, thinking how familiar this feeling was. The tightness in my chest, the way my hands wouldn't stop shaking, the quiet panic that always came after moments like that. Moments where I was expected to fix everything, hold everything, absorb everything, without so much as a thank you. And the messed up part? I used to think that made me strong. But lately, I'd started wondering if it just made me convenient. Work the next morning was the same as always, the clang of metal, the smell of grease, the hiss of steam from the pressure washers, all wrapped up in the cold air of the repair yard. Most people think working on freight locomotives is dirty, miserable work, and sometimes it is, but to me it's honest. When something breaks, you can see it. When something fails, you know why. There's no guilt or manipulation or passive-aggressive sighing. You fix what's broken and move on. I wish relationships were that simple. Reagan, my shift supervisor, noticed something was off before I even got my gloves on. She's one of those women who's tough as nails but soft around the eyes. Like life tried to break her once and she simply refused. Rough night? She asked, leaning against one of the tool benches. Her tone was casual but not careless. Reagan never asks unless she actually wants to know. I shrugged like it was nothing, but she wasn't buying it. Come on, Lane. You're walking like you've got a boulder strapped to your spine. That made me laugh a little. Try a whole family, I said, and she raised an eyebrow like she was waiting for the rest. I didn't tell her everything. God knows I wasn't ready to unload the entire circus. But I did let slip a few things. How my parents always assumed I'd pick up the slack. How Mason leaned on me even when he swore he didn't need help. How I hadn't had a real savings account in years because someone always needed a little extra before payday. Reagan didn't act shocked. She didn't pity me. She just listened, nodding like she'd heard 100 stories like mine from workers who spent more time fixing their families than fixing the trains. When I finished, she said one thing that stuck with me. You know, Harper, adults don't owe their parents a back pay plan. That debt doesn't exist, no matter how much they try to convince you it does. I didn't answer, but damn, that hit something deep. The next few weeks were a blur of long shifts and quietly shifting realizations. Every time my phone buzzed with a text from Mom, I'd hesitate before opening it, because it was never "How are you?" or "Hope you're resting," or anything even remotely resembling normal affection. No, it was always a request. Can you cover the water bill? Can you babysit? Can you pick up groceries? Can you send money to your brother? Mason's struggling. We're all struggling. You're the only one who's stable. Stable. I hated that word. It made me feel like a fence post they'd hammered into the ground, something meant to hold things up, not move, not break. One Saturday morning, I stopped by their house to drop off some leftover parts for Dad's workshop. He'd begged me for a specific clamp he needed, and when I stepped inside, the house looked exactly the same. Same Christmas wreath still hanging in January. Same stack of magazines on the table. Same broken light bulb they never bothered to fix because you can see fine during the day. It hit me then. Nothing here ever changed unless I changed it. What I didn't expect was the envelope sitting on Mom's counter. My name scribbled on the front. At first I thought it was another Harper can you note. But when I opened it, I felt my stomach twist. Inside was a receipt for a transaction I never made. $200 pulled from my checking account on a weekday morning while I was on shift. Mom must have seen the confusion on my face because she walked in right then, holding her mug like she hadn't done anything wrong. "Oh, that," she said casually, waving her hand. "We needed some groceries and your card was in the drawer. I knew you wouldn't mind. You're always so good about helping." Helping. That word again. Said like it was my job. Said like I didn't have bills, or a life, or my own damn limits. And I know this sounds small compared to the bigger things that happened later, but something in me went still. Not angry, not explosive, just still, like when the yard goes quiet before a blizzard. I left the house without saying much, drove straight home, and opened the top drawer of my desk. Inside was a thick binder I hadn't touched in months, a binder full of every bill I'd paid for them, every emergency loan, every temporary charge, every transaction they swore they'd cover next week. I flipped through the pages, years of financial band-aids I'd slapped over their mistakes, and realized I didn't even recognize the person who tolerated all this. The girl who kept everything in perfect order so she'd have proof, yet never used it. The quiet strategist who documented everything but never made a move. I wasn't her anymore. That night, I sat on my couch and started making copies of receipts, of bank statements, of every little thing I'd pretended didn't matter. At first it felt petty, like I was being dramatic. But the more I copied, the lighter I felt, like I was finally building something for myself instead of patching everyone else's sinking ship. It wasn't revenge. It was preparation, not for a fight exactly, but for an end. And what I didn't know then, what I couldn't have imagined, was that this quiet, steady gathering of evidence would become the very thing that cracked everything wide open. Because while I was preparing for peace, my family was preparing to cross a line I didn't know they were capable of crossing. And when they did, everything changed. I always thought the worst thing my parents could do was take my money behind my back. Turns out, I was adorably naive. Because the day everything blew up, the day the entire house of cards came crashing down, they crossed a line so insane, so brazen, that even now I still replay it like a scene from one of those crime documentaries, where you yell at the screen, "No way they thought they'd get away with that." But they did think that. They really did. And in their minds, I was the perfect target. Quiet, dutiful, predictable Harper. The girl who fixes things. The girl who doesn't fight back. Their safest bet. It happened on a Wednesday, the kind of day where everything feels slightly off, like the universe is clearing its throat before it delivers bad news. I'd just finished replacing a cracked valve on one of the engines, hands still greasy, hair shoved under my beanie. My phone buzzed with a call from a number I didn't recognize. Normally I ignore unknown numbers, because 9 times out of 10, it's either a scammer or my dentist. But something made me answer. Maybe intuition, maybe stupidity, maybe the fact that my gut had been screaming for weeks that something big was coming. "Is this Miss Harper Lane?" a voice asked, too polite, too rehearsed. Yeah, who's asking?" "This is Donna from First Springs Credit Union. We're calling to verify the second signature on the home improvement loan you opened last week." I swear the entire repair yard went quiet. Not literally, of course. The machine still roared. Someone was probably yelling at a forklift. But inside my chest? Silence. Cold, heavy, terrifying silence. "I'm sorry," I said, gripping my phone so hard I thought it might crack. "What loan?" The woman hesitated, that kind of pause customer service reps do when they realize they have stepped into a mess. It appears the loan was filed with your name and your mother's. The documents list your signature as primary applicant. I let out a short, humorless laugh. Ma'am, I'm at work in a train yard. I didn't sign anything. Another pause. If that's the case, Miss Lane, you may want to visit our branch as soon as possible. The loan is sizable. Sizable. That word felt like a weight dropping right into my gut. As soon as I hung up, I knew in my bones, who did it. My parents didn't even try to hide their patterns anymore. When they want something, they take it. And when they want forgiveness, they call it family. Reagan noticed me pacing and walked over with 2 coffees. Talk to me, she said, handing me one. I didn't even realize my hands were shaking until I tried to take the cup and nearly dropped it, so I told her. Maybe not everything, but enough that she understood the picture. My parents had forged my name on a loan big enough to drown me. She looked at me like she was trying to decide whether to hug me or help me bury a body. Harper, you know this is fraud, right? Like capital F fraud. I nodded. Yeah, I know. You going over there tonight? She asked. Yeah, I said, and it's not going to go the way they think. That evening, I drove to my parents' house with the same calm you have right before a tornado hits. Too calm, like your brain is saving the panic for later. Their living room lights glowed warm and cozy, like a Norman Rockwell painting dipped in manipulation. Mom was at the dining table peeling oranges. Dad sat in his recliner watching reruns like he was the CEO of doing nothing. Mason was scrolling on his phone, pretending not to see me walk in. Mom looked up, smiling like everything was normal. Oh, honey, you're early. We were thinking about ordering pizza. You want... I dropped the loan documents onto the table. The sound was louder than I expected. Sharp, final, like a gavel. Her smile faltered. What's that? You tell me, I said, my voice steady in a way that scared even me. Because according to the bank, I applied for a $30,000 home improvement loan last week. Funny, right? I must have blacked out while signing it. She blinked, her face rearranging itself too quickly. Harper, you're being dramatic. It's just a family loan. Your father said... Dad didn't even look away from the TV. Everyone benefits, Harper. Don't start. I laughed, actually laughed. Oh, so now forgery is a group project? Mom snapped. Lower your voice. The neighbors don't need to hear our business. Maybe they should, I said. Because I talked to the bank today, and they have security footage of whoever signed my name. That wasn't technically true, but oh my God, the way their faces drained, worth every second. Mom went pale. Dad finally looked at me, and for once he didn't look bored. He looked scared. Mom reached for the papers like she could erase them with her fingertips. We planned to pay it off. We just needed a little help getting approved. You used my identity. It's family, she shouted, voice breaking. No, I said softly, it's fraud. Dad scoffed. You wouldn't report us. Don't be ridiculous. After everything we've done for you, everything they'd done for me, I could make a scrapbook with all the bills I'd paid. I opened my folder, the binder I'd spent the last few nights preparing. I laid out every receipt, every transfer, every ATM withdrawal they borrowed. Mason's eyes widened. Holy crap! Mom hissed, put that away! No, I said. You want to treat me like an ATM? Fine, here's your transaction history. Dad stood up, fists clenched, but when I met his eyes, he stopped. Something in him finally realized I wasn't bluffing. I pulled out one last page. A letter addressed to the police department. Not filed, but ready. Signed, dated, copied twice. Mom's hands shook. Harper, sweetheart, you wouldn't... I would, I said. And here's the thing. You don't get to cry now. You didn't cry when you took my money. You didn't cry when you signed my name, so don't cry because I finally said no. The room went dead silent. Then, something unexpected happened. Mason put his phone down. They can't keep doing this, he said quietly. I'm sorry, Harp, I really am. I should have said something sooner. It stunned me. Because my brother, who'd spent years letting Mom control his spine like a puppet string, finally cracked. And for a moment, I saw the kid he used to be. The one who defended me in middle school when some jerk made fun of my work boots. Dad glared at him like betrayal was contagious. You stay out of this. No, Mason said, I'm done. That broke something in Mom. She sat down hard, palms pressed to her forehead. Everything we did was for this family. For you kids. You were trying to control me, I said, and you lost. Dad pointed at the door. If you walk out, don't come back. And here's the plot twist they never saw coming. I wasn't asking for permission, I said, picking up my folder. I came to tell you this is the last free thing you get from me. Mom whispered, Harper, please. But her voice was thin and hollow, like she finally understood the math of losing someone you thought you owned. I turned to Mason. You coming? He hesitated, then grabbed his jacket. Yeah. And that's how we left. Two kids who finally saw the truth behind the people who raised us. The silence in that house as we walked out didn't sound like anger or shock. It sounded like defeat. Their defeat. When I stepped into the cold air, something inside me finally snapped back into place, like a joint that had been out for years. And for the first time in my entire life, I felt free. When Mason and I stepped out of that house, the cold hit us hard, like the world was reminding us we were on our own now. No safety net, no family obligations, no more guilt chains disguised as love. Just the two of us, standing in the driveway like a couple of kids who finally realized the boogeyman wasn't under the bed. It was in the kitchen, wearing cardigans and clipping coupons. I remember looking at him, waiting for him to change his mind and run back inside like he always did. But he didn't. He shoved his hands in his pockets, stared at the ground and said, I don't even know who I am without them. And the sad thing? I knew exactly what he meant. We grabbed burgers from a 24-hour diner because neither of us had eaten dinner, and because nothing makes you reconsider your whole childhood like greasy fries at midnight. Mason kept glancing at me like he was waiting for me to yell at him or blame him for not helping sooner, but I didn't have the energy for anger. Not that night. He pushed a fry around the plate and whispered, Mom's gonna lose it when she realizes you weren't bluffing. I sipped my soda. You know what? Let her. And that was the moment I knew everything had changed. Not because I suddenly became fearless, but because for the first time I wasn't terrified of disappointing them. I was tired, yeah. Hurt, definitely. But scared? Not anymore. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. Anyone who's lived through chaos knows silence is not peace. It's a warning. My parents didn't call, though I knew they were stewing. My mother's version of surrender has always been silence followed by a guilt bomb the size of a small planet. I braced myself, but surprisingly, the first call wasn't from her. It was from the bank. They confirmed what I already suspected. My signature was officially deemed inconsistent. The loan was frozen pending investigation. And the woman on the phone, Donna, lowered her voice and said, You might want to speak with law enforcement, Miss Lane. This is significant. I thanked her, hung up, and sat there on my couch like someone had cut the sound out of my world. Significant. The word felt heavy, but also freeing, in a strange way. Like I wasn't crazy. Like what they did was actually as wrong as it felt. That night, Mason came over after work. He looked rough, dark circles, the kind of exhaustion you get from fighting a battle you didn't even know you'd signed up for. He told me Mom had started her meltdown cycle. First came denial. She's lying. Then excuses. We needed that loan. Then martyrdom. I sacrificed everything for those kids. And finally the blame stage. Harper is trying to destroy this family. He rubbed his eyes and said, Dad's losing it. He kept saying you'd come crawling back once you calmed down. He thinks this whole thing is just you acting out. I snorted. Yeah, acting out by refusing to go to jail for them. I'm terrible. Mason actually smiled, for the first time in days. Then he went quiet. They're scared, Harp. I've never seen them like this. I didn't say anything, because part of me wanted them to be scared. Part of me wanted them to finally understand the cost of treating their child like a spare credit card with legs. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel the sting of it too. The grief of realizing your parents aren't good people, that's a special kind of heartbreak. It doesn't shatter all at once. It erodes, slow and cruel, until suddenly you're standing there with empty hands wondering how you didn't notice the pieces falling off. 2 days later, Mom showed up at my apartment unannounced. No call, no text, just her standing on my doorstep gripping a grocery bag like she was delivering a peace treaty. Inside was a cake from the supermarket bakery, frosting smudged, the words, "We love you," written like the decorator was in a hurry to clock out. She walked right in without asking, because of course she did. "This place looks lonely," she said immediately, scanning the room like she owned it. "You should let me help you decorate. You've always had terrible taste." I took a deep breath. "Mom, what are you doing here?" She set the cake down, folded her arms, and said, "You can't do this to us, Harper. You can't walk away. It's cruel." "Cruel, my God. You forged my name," I said quietly. "You stole thousands of dollars in my identity, and you're calling me cruel?" Her lip trembled, but her eyes stayed cold. "Parents make mistakes, but you're choosing to punish us. Your father hasn't slept. Your brother is falling apart, and you're living in this depressing little apartment acting like you're better than us." That last part was the truth behind the mask. She wasn't here for forgiveness. She was here to remind me of my place. She stared at me the way she always did when she wanted control. "Harper," she whispered, "family forgives." "No," I said, "family respects boundaries, you don't." Her voice broke into something sharp. "We raised you. You owe us." There it was, the debt they think every child owes. The one they inflate, manipulate, weaponize. I stepped aside and pointed at the door. "I don't owe you anything." She went silent, the kind of silence that means she's calculating. Then she grabbed the cake, muttered "fine," and stormed out without looking back. I stood there in the empty quiet of my apartment shaking, not from fear, but from the weight of finally choosing myself. The next morning, the bank called again. The investigation was complete. My name was officially removed, my credit restored. The loan was now solely under my parents' responsibility. And just like that, the cord snapped. Later, Mason texted me. "Mom's losing it, Dad's furious, they said they're done helping you." I laughed out loud. They'd never helped me a day in their lives. But there was something else in his message. Something raw. "I think they're scared of you now." Scared of me. Not because I was cruel. Not because I wanted revenge. But because I stopped being useful. And for people like them, losing control is the worst punishment imaginable. A week later, Mason and I sat on my couch building IKEA shelves, badly, while he vented about his own life, his own mistakes, his own need to finally break free. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't magical. It wasn't some Hallmark healing montage. But we were inching towards something better, something healthier. At one point he said, "You know, it's weird. I'm actually proud of you." I nudged his shoulder. "Thanks, dummy." He grinned. "I kinda wish you'd blown up sooner. Could have saved me years of therapy." And in that stupid little moment, surrounded by loose screws and takeout containers, I realized something important. The destruction wasn't the end. It was the rebuild. And maybe, just maybe, this time we'd build something that wasn't held together by guilt, or fear, or obligation. Maybe this time it would finally be real. I wish I could tell you that after everything blew up, life instantly turned into some soft-focus redemption arc where everyone apologized, healed, hugged, maybe got matching tattoos to symbolize new beginnings. But that's not real life. Real life is messier, slower, and a whole lot quieter than the dramatic finale people expect. Honestly, the strangest part wasn't the fight, the loan, or even the fallout. It was waking up days later and realizing, for the first time in years, no one needed me. Not urgently, not desperately, not manipulatively. My phone stayed silent except for texts from coworkers and a stupid meme Mason sent at 3 a.m. about siblings who trauma bonded over shared parental dysfunction. And just like that, the house felt different. My little apartment, with creaky floors and mismatched furniture, felt mine. Not a bunker, not a hiding place, not somewhere I crawled into after patching up everyone else's fires. It finally felt like a home. On a random Tuesday, I sat on my back steps with a mug of coffee, watching the sun come up over the apartment parking lot. A stray cat, who I'd unofficially named Detective Whiskers, was sniffing around my planter box like he owned the place. Everything was so calm it felt surreal. I remember thinking, is this what peace feels like? This tiny, unremarkable silence? And then, almost laughably on cue, my phone buzzed. Not Mom, not Dad, Mason. He wrote, "I talked to them last night. They're still blaming you. But I told them I'm done letting them rewrite everything. I'm choosing my own life too." I stared at that message for a long time. He didn't owe me that. He didn't owe me anything. But he chose it anyway. I typed back, "That's huge, I'm proud of you." He replied with, "Don't get sappy, dude." And I laughed, like actually laughed, from my gut, the kind of laugh that feels like cleaning out old rooms inside your chest. It wasn't some big victory, but it meant something. Maybe the most important thing, not all of us had to stay stuck. Weeks passed. My parents didn't reach out again. Not a call, not a text, not a snide voicemail dripping in guilt. At first, that silence stung like hell. Because even when you walk away willingly, it still hurts to know someone could have chosen you and didn't. But over time, the sting softened into something else. Clarity. One night after a long shift, Reagan and I sat in the break room eating leftover donuts from the night crew. She nudged me with her elbow and said, "You're lighter, Lane. You look like someone who finally stopped carrying an entire mountain." I shrugged, but she wasn't wrong. "It feels weird," I said. "Like learning how to breathe again after holding it for years." She gave me that look, half proud, half knowing. "Freedom's strange at first, but you'll get used to it." And she was right. Little by little, I started doing things I never thought about before because I was always too busy fixing other people's problems. I fixed the squealing heater in my truck. I took a welding class at the community college because I wanted to, not because someone needed something repaired. I even joined a trivia team at the local bar, though I'm terrible at sports questions and usually end up Googling who won the 1994 Super Bowl before remembering that's cheating. But the moment I felt the biggest shift came unexpectedly. I was cleaning out my closets, finally getting rid of junk I didn't want anymore, when I found my old binder. The one packed with years of financial desperation, secret payments, little rescues no one thanked me for. I sat on the floor flipping through page after page, until I didn't feel anything at all. Not anger, not resentment, just a kind of numb acknowledgement. That girl who kept all those records, she was gone, and she deserved the life I was building now. I took the binder outside, ripped out the last few pages I'd kept, and tossed it into the recycling bin. And weirdly, it didn't feel like burning bridges. It felt like releasing ghosts. A few days later, something small but meaningful happened. I got home from work to find a note taped to my door. Not from my parents, thank God, but from my neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez, the sweet older lady with the loud parrot and the even louder opinions. The note said, "You seem happier these days. Proud of you, mija. Come over for tacos this weekend." It wasn't much, but it was enough to make me sit down on my couch and breathe in that strange, fragile feeling again. Peace. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't loud, but it was mine. Maybe the biggest twist of all is that I didn't need revenge to feel whole. I didn't need them to apologize. I didn't need them to change. All I needed was to stop letting their chaos write my story. And look, I'm not gonna lie and pretend every day is perfect. Some mornings I wake up and miss the idea of a family, the one I thought I had, not the one that actually exists. Sometimes I scroll through old photos and wonder what life would have looked like if they'd been different people. But missing the fantasy doesn't mean I want the reality back. If anything, it reminds me how far I've come. Now, when I think about the future, I don't picture myself surviving. I picture myself living. And that's something no one in my family ever taught me to do. So yeah, this isn't the story of a perfect comeback or a magical reconciliation. It's the story of someone finally walking out of a burning house and realizing the world outside wasn't as cold or terrifying as she'd been told. It's the story of choosing yourself, not out of selfishness, but out of survival, out of hope, out of finally understanding that love without respect isn't love at all. If there's anything I want someone else to take from this, it's this. Just because someone raised you doesn't mean they're entitled to you. Just because you're strong doesn't mean you have to carry everything. And just because they call it family doesn't mean it's healthy. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away. And sometimes the sweetest justice is building a life they don't get to control anymore. And for the first time, staring at the quiet glow of my little apartment, I whispered a truth I never thought I'd feel so deeply. I'm finally free. Here's what I've come to understand after everything. After the shouting, the silence, the broken expectations, and that moment I finally chose myself. Sometimes the hardest battles aren't fought in the world outside, but inside the walls we grew up in. And standing up for yourself in front of the very people who shaped you, that takes a different kind of courage. What I learned is that love isn't supposed to feel like obligation, And loyalty isn't supposed to feel like debt. You can care about people and still refuse to be their doormat. You can set boundaries without being cruel. And sometimes walking away isn't an act of anger. It's an act of self-respect. In the end, the truth really is like they say, you reap what you sow. And choosing peace, even when it feels uncomfortable or unfamiliar, is worth more than any forced harmony built on guilt and silence. I've also realized that confronting unfairness doesn't make you ungrateful. It makes you honest. Breaking the cycle doesn't make you cold. It makes you brave. And finding your own worth after years of being told you don't have any? That's the quiet victory nobody can take away. They finally understood what they'd lost. They apologized weeks later. I forgave them, but this time on my terms. If this story reminded you of your own journey or opened your eyes to something you've been quietly carrying, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your experience in the comments, let me know what resonated with you, hit the like button if the story moved you, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next tale, full of twists, heart, and a little hard-earned wisdom. Wishing you a gentle night, a clear mind, and the kind of peace that stays with you long after the noise fades.